Yes, thank you, Peter and James, for an excellent introduction. And good morning, everyone, and welcome to this first session of Heal the Land, Heal the People webinar. And this session will be on Heal the Land. I'm Hendrik Smith. I'm Conservation Agriculture Facilitator at Grain SA and the Maize Trust. I'm a trained soil scientist, but I've been involved with research and development in conservation agriculture and soil health related projects for about 25 years, working mostly with farmers. So, and that is my story. I will introduce a whole range of farmers to you from different contexts. That is the main topic and the main theme of this session. And they will come from different experiences, different contexts, different areas of the country, and they will tell their story, and that is the real focus of this session. But before that, I would like to present to you the definition of regenerative agriculture, and then secondly, also the reasons why it is necessary, as well as the principles of regenerative agriculture and how those principles then are implemented and adapted in different contexts. So I want to present the definition as it is described in a manifesto, which is signed today. So regenerative agriculture, as it is put there, uses practices that improve the soil health by regenerating and revitalizing the soil organic matter, leading to more and healthier living soil organisms or communities of organisms, as well as an abundance of water and fertility in the soil. Above ground, it leads to a flourishing biodiversity and clean water in streams and rivers. This, by definition, is dynamic and holistic, using agroecological principles and including systems such as permaculture, silvopasture, conservation agriculture, organic farming, which apply practices such as no-tillage, cover crops, crop rotation, intercropping, composting, livestock integration, grazing, mobile animal shelters, and pasture cropping, among many others. So from the healthy soil, nutritious foods are produced that heals people. So the question is, why do we need regenerative agriculture? Well, first of all, we've lost about 50% of our soil organic carbon in our soils, especially in the cultivation and tillage plowing conditions. But also a substantial amount of carbon has been lost under grazing and natural areas. So in order for us to sustain our production into the future, we need to regenerate, we need to restore that soil organic carbon, because that's a primary element, indicator for our soil health. So we need to restore that. We need to start to change our mindsets towards soil restoration in order to start and continue this journey successfully right to the end. Furthermore, this carbon that was lost from out of the soil went into the atmosphere and contributed and is contributing to global warming, climate change. And that has also helped us to put us on this path. You can see the red line on top there, on our current path towards a territory, a very dangerous territory, very hot territory where we don't want to be, where it's going to be very difficult for us to make a living and practice agriculture. What we need to do is we need to bend down that curve, not to the brown curve, or not to the light brown curve, but to the green curve, right down at the bottom, where it's a safe place and territory and environment where we can live and we can practice agriculture. And agriculture can play a huge role to reduce the carbon footprint, to draw down that carbon back into the soil where it belongs, and to cool down Earth by regenerating the natural biosystem or regenerating the nature, because that is how nature functions. We also have a broken water cycle and in many areas of agriculture in the country, and that is a major contributing factor for desertification. If you look at the picture on your right-hand side of the screen, you see factors like tillage, loss of soil organic carbon, and bare soil fallow areas, which leads to a warmer and drier landscape. The heat flux and heat being created in that area, in that landscape. To the left of your picture, you see factors like green plants, so a soil sponge, healthy soil with a lot of soil organic carbon, and soil cover, which leads to high evapotranspiration rates, creating a cool and wet landscape. And that is what we want to create with regenerative agriculture. Erosion is one of our major problems, and perhaps the biggest problem in land degradation, where the soil is tilled and not protected against the impact of raindrops and runoff. A lot of topsoil, especially the fertile topsoil, is lost, ending up in the rivers and streams where it is polluting them. We also have a huge problem with wind erosion. And apart from only losing a lot of soil from wind erosion, especially in the western parts of our country, it is also a contributing factor to desertification. And it also helps to decrease the chances of precipitation. We also have problems with loss of biodiversity. In other words, we're losing a lot of plant and animal species, especially in those areas that you can see colored with with red and orange. Agricultural intense cropping areas specifically, we're losing a lot of these species that actually help us to farm better, to sustain our farming. According to the Biodiversity Program of the United Nations, they identified cropland expansion, unsustainable land management practices, and climate change as the main drivers of this loss of biodiversity and land degradation. We need a better understanding of soil and ecology, nature in general, and how to put that life back into our soil, how to restore, regenerate our soils. First of all, we need to know and understand that soil is a living ecosystem. 95% of life on land is in the soil underneath our feet. So we should be understanding that we really need to nurture that life. That life must be active, must be vibrant in order to create those healthy soils that we really need to restore in order to sustain our production and produce healthy food. These are just a couple of pictures of some of the wonderful, interesting, beautiful creatures and organisms that we find in our soil. By the way, we know about 1% of the creatures in the soil. What we do know is that in one handful of soil, there's more organisms than people on land, on Earth. So you can see bacteria there, you can see saprophytic fungi, you can see mycorrhizal fungi in the top left, and that's one of the most important organisms in the soil. Talk about that a bit later. Protozoa, nematodes, arthropods. You can see, just to get an idea how these creatures in the soil look like. Of course, if these organisms and what we also call the soil biology or the soil food web is healthy, populations are in good shape and they are active and they are producing, they create healthy soil. And a healthy soil have lots of ecosystem functions and services, which is the basis for sustainable agriculture. And those services are provided for free for farmers specifically, such as more water in the soil, more fertility in the soil, less diseases, etc., etc. So we need to create healthy soils in order to provide these services that can help us to farm in a sustainable manner into the future. And of course, This tells us that soil is the heart of regenerative agriculture. We say that take care of the land and the land will take care of you. Heal the land and the land will heal the people. The question is, what are the principles of regenerative agriculture that will heal the land and will produce healthy food? Well, first of all, the first principle is to minimize soil disturbance. Here you can see an example of crop farming where we do no tillage, planting without disturbing the soil, planting without plowing. And you can see examples of large-scale tractor-drawn systems, no-till planters, smaller tractor-drawn planters on your left corner, and then also animal-drawn no-till planters and hand-operated no-till planters. So the moment you disturb the soil, you trigger that downward spiral of soil degradation, where you lose a lot of carbon, you lose a lot of water, and you lose all the ecosystem functions and services that is provided by a healthy soil. So we really need to minimize soil disturbance. The second principle is to keep the soil covered by a living or dead organic mulch, living or dead plants. And that is to protect the soil from erosion, of course. It is also food for microorganisms. It controls soil temperature, suppresses weeds, improves that soil water balance that I spoke about, the water cycle, and allows water to infiltrate and enter the soil where it belongs. The next principle is to maximize crop diversity. And that we do with crop rotations, crop associations, intercropping, double cropping. And you can see some of the examples there. And that is the main reason is to maximize photosynthetic capacity. In other words, to harvest, to maximize the harvesting of the sun's energy through the plants, through the roots into the soil, where the soil and the roots play a huge role to sequester, to draw that carbon out of the atmosphere. Crop diversity also provides a range of ecosystem services like beneficial insects, pollinator insects, and of course, for the farmer, it is really necessary and helps to produce and to farm profitably. Next principle is, let me just move on, is to maximize living roots year-round. And that is because 70% of the soil organic carbon emanates through the roots. It's released by the roots through root juices or root exudates, which is a product of photosynthesis from the sun. So, and the more diverse the root systems, the better the release of a wide range of juices, because it feeds the soil biology, it feeds the soil organisms, and soil organism doesn't want to have only one source of food. Like us, like humans, they also need the diversity of food to be healthy. So the more diverse the root systems, the more diverse the plants, the healthier the soil organisms in the soil. And here you can see a beautiful relationship between soil organisms and roots if they are fed very well. On your right and bottom, you can see association between mycorrhizal fungi and roots in a healthy soil, where the mycorrhizal fungi increases the root capacity with up to 1,000 times, allowing the roots to access much more water, much more nutrients into the soil, protecting it from diseases, etc. So that mutualistic relationship between roots and soil food web start with the diversity and the longevity of roots into the soil. The next principle is the integration of livestock or animals into the system, because it's also a part of biodiversity. Nature cannot function without animals. Animals is a huge part, an important part of of nature. And so we also, by mimicking nature, we want to move closer to nature, and we want to bring in animals into our farming systems as well. So here the goal is to mimic natural grazing systems in which wild grazers move in large herds over a short period, coming back to the same spot after a decent rest of about up to 12 months. And the effect of the trampling of the hooves, the dung, as you can see in the top left corner, the urine, the saliva, and the eating of the plants on the soil health is quite significant. So we have seen that really the way our soils and vegetation has been developed over millions of years is this way, and we really need to bring that practice into our farming systems to make that maximum impact on our soil health. So if it is possible for any farmer to be able to adapt these principles on a piece of land or on a farm, there's a whole range of benefits that are guaranteed, like positive impact on soil and water health, positive impact on biodiversity, higher stable yields and profitability, improved food quality, higher carbon sequestration. In other words, it draws much more carbon out of the atmosphere into the soil. It has a higher resource use efficiency. It makes much more efficient use of water and nutrients, for example. It is much better in terms of the mitigation and adaptation capacity to climate change. It is much more managing weeds, pests, and diseases. So those are some of the benefits of conservation or regenerative agriculture. And without further ado, I want to introduce a panel of participants from different contexts. Now, context is really important because farmers differ in their soils and vegetation and climate, but they also differ in terms of objectives, values, levels of knowledge, skills, finances, implements, etc. So every farmer will have to try and again to adapt these principles in their own unique context. So what we have here is farmers from different contexts, and they're going to describe how they adapt these principles in their context. First, we have Koki Mokoko from Van der Bijl Park, the southern parts of Gauteng province with dryland and irrigated mixed crop livestock farming. Then DF Fiber from Betjana Cattle Company in Vryburg in the arid Kalahari region of the Northwest province with diverse, extensive livestock and grazing systems. Then we have Bertie Coetzee from Loeverland, Prieska area in the Northern Cape province with diverse annual and perennial cropping and livestock farming. Irrigated from the Orange River, we have Egon Zunkel from Zunkel Farms, the Bergville, KwaZulu-Natal province with dryland and irrigated mixed crop livestock farming. We have Timakola Matebule from Maglatini Development Foundation, working in KwaZulu-Natal province as a researcher with smallholder conservation agriculture. We have Charles Williams from the Tour and Private Seller in Stellenbosch, Western Cape with wine and viticulture systems. Fred Dupont from the Food Farm Group from Limpopo, Mpumalanga, KwaZulu-Natal and Western Cape provinces doing fruit farming. And then Dr. Johan Strauss in the Western Cape Department of Agriculture doing research on conservation agriculture, grain farming in the Western Cape. So we will see how they apply these principles in their context. So I want you to sit back, relax, and enjoy this next experience with the farmers. Thank you very much.
I've started with conservation agriculture some 5 years ago. Took my soil samples and the condition of my soil was deteriorating, going down and down and down. From there, I began with some 30 hectares with the aim of totally going the conservation way. I do maize, and the following year I rotate it with a legume, specifically soya beans. And sunflower also, you can see the big heads from the land. That's another rotation that I'm doing. I've integrated livestock into my whole process. I plant pastures for that. And currently I've planted sorghum. It's doing very well. Also, I mix it with brass seed. It's expensive, but it's good. Very palatable, high in protein, so it's very good. Controlling my movement of my livestock, I use paddock. That's electrical fencing. That will control your grazing system, and it's very important. We've got a niche market, deriving a good premium, 45 rand per kilogram, as compared to other abattoirs and auctions. So it's a good thing, and grass-fed meat is the way to go. It's a niche market. Conservation agriculture it's very profitable because your input costs are low, your profit, the yield on the field, it's high. You also enjoy the benefit of improved soil, the biodiversity, everything with this. We must go back to our old system and reap the good benefits. One of the learning practices is experimenting on your own farm. Just a piece of land, and then you experiment, share the ideas, share the experiences with other farmers. Every farmer must have his own small experience plot. Then we share it, and also we'll share it in a broader conservation clubs that we'll be having. I would encourage farmers to start their own study groups, and our government must now also support small beginning farmers and then plant this idea of conservation agriculture. That's how we can win in this world.
Hi guys, DF5 here of the Bechani Cattle Company. We farm close to Lona in the Northwest Province. It's about 50 kilometers northwest of Vryburg in Kalahari Bushveld, as well as on planted blowbuffel pastures. We changed to regenerative agriculture about 3-4 years ago with the help of Johan Zietsman, and we currently are busy breeding our own composite cattle breed, the Adapter, out of Nguni, Boran, Mashona and Beefmaster cattle to also fit our grazing system. So our goal is to breed an animal that can maximize sustainable profit per hectare in extreme climates under our management system of non-selective ultra-high density grazing while improving the veld and healing the soil. Furthermore, we started the last couple of months to stack enterprises by adding laying hens to follow our cattle in the veld. We also started producing meat chickens on the veld, and we added pollinator strips around our water reservoirs to produce honey throughout the dry winter season. We are also members of the Grass-Fed South Africa movement, and we believe passionately that the future of regenerative agriculture in South Africa is in the direct marketing of value-added products out of a diverse multi-species stacked production system. That's basically our approach. This is just a typical picture on our farm of everything being utilized on the left with that type of residue on planted blowbuffel pastures, and on the right the animals, beefmaster cows, grazing the blowbuffel grass, which has been typically rested for about 12 months before they get in here. 3, changing our mind. I think many people want different results. The only way you're going to get different results is if you take different actions. The only way to take different actions is to make different decisions. And the only way to make different decisions is to expose yourself to new ideas and actually starting to think differently. That's the only way you get different results. So we needed to change our approach from the typical maximized production per animal to maximum sustainable profit per hectare. That's a big mind shift to make for any cattle rancher specifically. We changed our focus from meat production to grass production to soil health over the past 4 or 5 years. And we also had to change our approach from a monoculture cattle rancher to a stacked enterprise entrepreneur, which is also something new for us. And we make up the music as we see the notes, and we make the song as we go along. We learn every day. This is a slide of us changing our grazing in the winter time. Normally in the winter we will be with our main herds in the bushveld, and in summer times we will have them on the Bloberville planted pastures. The red line shows you to the left where the buck is at the back, where we have been the day before and basically utilized everything non-selectively, and then on the right is where the new grazing is for the fresh day to start. We typically have herds between 100 and 300 cows per herd, and we move them 3 times a day. In the morning just after lunch, and then just before we go home in the evenings we move them again. So this is typically how our utilization will look. Everything will be taken away, all the types of grasses, non-selectively. Here we are changing our grazing in the summer. So from a set stock normal conventional grazing, we changed over to ultra high density grazing. It's very easy to see here where we are going in and where we have been. We take away everything, and this pasture on the left where we came out will typically rest for at least 12 months before we get back into that again. This is all planted Genchris ciliaris, on which we normally graze in the summertime during our breeding season. So we also realized that we had to change our cattle to fit our grazing system and not the other way around. So we started breeding our own composite cattle breed, the adapter, specifically to work under ultra high density grazing systems. We realized that your normal run-of-the-mill cattle genetics are all focused basically on feedlot production, and they are not suited for this type of off-the-veld, grass-fed, ultra-high density, non-selective type of grazing system. So we combined the Nguni and the Beef Master that we have, and we also brought in Boran and Mashona. Basically the Nguni for its fertility and hardiness and tick resistance, the Boran for its fattening ability on grass, the Beef Master for its carcass qualities and also milk, and the Mashona for its polled genes, as well as having a nice red solid color coat. So our focus is to breed early maturing, fertile, veld adapted medium frame animals that can all calve on 2 and 3 years, as we view that as the #1 contributor to our success, other than just increasing the number of animals on the same hectareage. We also know that the second largest driver of our profit is fertility, so we focus on fertility within our herd. This year we also started to add pasture chickens to our operation, a la Joel Salatin, in the same type of chicken tractors that he builds himself. This has been a real revolution to our cattle enterprise. I think what I really like about this is that it adds diversity to our business model. It changes our cash flow profile, as the chicken cycle would be about 7-8 weeks every batch, as opposed to a cow and calf operation, which would be obviously far longer. So we're really excited about the pasture chickens, and we cannot keep up with all the demand that we're getting for healthy, nutritious, pasture-reared chicken meat. We also added pastured eggs. So as you'll see on the slide, they're in an eggmobile. Their nests is that little house that you see inside the eggmobile. The shiny one, that's where they lay their eggs. Their water is inside, their feed is inside. They sleep inside at night. And as you can see, if you look closely, there's a electric net fence around on the perimeter, which will also move along every 2 or 3 days. So they roam outside, but they cannot go outside the electric netting, and that's basically to prevent issues with predators. We're very happy, and you'll see later on in one of the slides, we're very happy with the effect that the chickens and their manure and just their way of expressing their chickenness adds to the whole system that we run on the farm. It adds a lot of fertility to our veld, and that's our main focus. We are after the biological service of the chickens, and the fact that they give us an egg every day and also changes our business's cash flow profile is a fantastic bonus. So yes, we added beehives and honey to our product range, and also as part of our stacking approach towards our business model. I think one of the biggest challenges that we face today is a lack of species diversity, and for us that's important to change that on our farm. So we want more pollinators per hectare, which would give us more healthy pollination during the summer months, more plant species diversity, and a more healthy functioning soil and ecosystem, which eventually will lead to more grass for our cows, plus honey. So basically, our bees will work for our cows, that work for our chickens, that work for our bees. Everything within our system works together with the same goal of maximizing sustainable profit per hectare. And we will very soon harvest our first honey and add that to our pure veld range of products. We realized that part of closing the whole circle is we need to change our marketing approach from just a normal producing a commodity, just taking it to the stock fair, selling it to a middleman. Actually create a brand, get some social media awareness, see the customer directly, look him in the eye, add value to our own products, and sell it directly to the end consumer. So my wife started making tallow balm of our grass-fed animals' tallow that she renders together with some essential oils, and that was the first product that we did, was the pure veld tallow balm, and we added eggs to that, and then we added the meat chickens, and soon we'll add our beef to that as well as the honey. So yes, we believe that this approach will maximize our profit at the end of the day, and we believe in our product. So taking it all the way and controlling it and adding value to it, we believe is going to change the whole face of our farm. And also, which is very important for us, is to create jobs by keeping all the value addition to our products right here in our community, and also create space for our own children one day to come back to the farm, because it's not just a production unit, but it's also something far bigger with logistics and marketing and sales and accounting and everything else added on top of that. So here you can basically see the results with the red arrow indicating the fence line. We are farming on the left and one of our neighbors on the right side. Our neighbor is carrying the typical stocking rate in our area, which would be around 1 livestock unit on anything between 5 and 10 hectares. He will be typically on around 7 hectares per livestock unit. And on the left, where the veld is in a far better condition, under our management approach of ultra high density non-selective grazing, we are running on 1 livestock unit on 2.85 hectares. So it's basically double to triple the norm of our area. If you zoom in, you can see under the red arrow is where the chicken tractor is at the moment. And here in the front is where it was about 3-4 weeks before. And you can see that you've got this green strip of blowbuffle grass coming through, and to the left and the right of it, it's still your annual less preferable grasses of poorer quality. So what we've noticed here is that the chickens, with their activity of scratching around and fertilizing the soil, basically changes the soil's profile from bacterial dominant soil to a fungal dominant soil, and then all of a sudden your perennial grasses starts to dominate your annuals, and basically it starts improving your species diversity. And that's why in this summer, come from September, we're adding another couple of these chicken treggers, as we call them, because we can see that the effect that this is having on the soil is massive. Now, we really love it. Some of the other results, of course, important is not just the grass and the ecosystem, but also the cattle. Here you can see a typical example of one of our heifers. She would be a Beefmaster Nguni heifer, and she calved at 24 months. And of our F1 heifers this past season, 81% of them calved at 24 months, which I believe is quite an achievement. You won't find that amongst many other cattle operators. Most people here calve at 2.5 to 3 years of age, not 24 months. We believe that is mega important for us to crank up the genetic progress that we can make by having an early maturing animal. And we had a conception rate last year under ultra-high density grazing of 87%, with which we are also quite happy, seeing that normally under ultra-high density grazing you see your conception rates drop. For us it's important to find the right balance between managing the veld and also managing the animals to such an extent that we can increase our stocking rate but not see a massive drop in our fertility. Guys, really thank you for listening and tuning in. I think as a parting message, to sum all up, the way we approach farming is holistically. We don't think that you can achieve long-term results with short-term thinking, and therefore we as a family plan in decades. And we focus on building systems that can symbiotically regenerate each other, and by doing so can increase soil health and yield the land, increase production and a sustainable profit, and also create rural jobs. We need jobs in rural South Africa to stabilize this country, to make a difference, and specifically to give the young people of this country hope of a better future going forward. Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Morning all, this is Bertie Kutsia from Loverland Farm, Prieska in the Northern Cape. Thanks for having me on this webinar. It's a great privilege to be here today. Our vision on Loverland is to produce a basket full of natural, nutritious and wholesome products by working with nature. Diversity in this basket reflects biodiversity and health of the soil and the farm. Our mission is to bring this basket straight to the consumer to make it as accessible and affordable as possible. We strive to farm sustainably and regeneratively with a focus on closed loops and systems design. We want to explore and demonstrate resilient solutions on a small and large scale to agricultural issues in the context of climate change and geopolitical challenges. We want to contribute to social and environmental regeneration through creating a safe, prosperous and environmentally regenerative farm which serves this and future generations. We hope to inspire, teach and capacitate others to do the same while contributing to a healthy food system. Okay, so this slide is all about the markets. Probably a slide that should normally be at the end of a presentation, but that's the one I want to start with because I soon realized that the biggest players in this operation will be the market, the consumer. So we started thinking about our produce a lot more like wine. People want to know where the vineyards are, how they farmed, what the soil is like, what the temperature is like, etc. So we started thinking more about what is going to be in the basket. And we started thinking about our grains, our bread, our pecan nuts, the meat, everything we sell. We started thinking more in terms of wine, in terms of what is the origin, how is it farmed, how is it packaged, and obviously, what does it taste like? It must be delicious and it must be nutritious. For the next slide, we go all the way back to the beginning, or the foundation of everything we are doing, and that is the animals. We believe that for us to farm the way we do with organic, NATAL, regenerative agriculture needs to be backed or built on animals. So we do ultra-high density grazing, sometimes just with cattle, but mostly we do it in a mixed herd. So the great thing about a mixed herd is that everything eats different and everything's manure is different, all of the species. So you will get the grazers, the sheep and the cattle that will go in and trample and eat all the grass mostly. The goat will go in there and eat the hardy weeds, and the pigs will just get in there and basically clean out the nut sedge and just plow with their noses. And the pigs are also there to close the loops in terms of our pumpkin operation and also our bran from our milling operation. Okay, then we move on to our grains. We grow certified organic maize and wheat. Our main focus here is to mill it ourselves so that we go as far down the chain as we can, making polenta and pap and also stone ground flour for baking. We grow this grains in rotation with our pastures. And then we will use NATAL, we will use intercropping, and we will also use things like relay cropping to obviously to battle the weeds and also to work on the soil health and to fix nitrogen and carbon while we are growing our cash crops. Okay, while we're talking about grains, I want to focus a bit on some of the methods like intercropping and the reasons why we use it. So if you're talking about organic NATAL, then you can't really afford to make mistakes, and everything needs to be planned in advance. And also in your crops, you need to know what needs of the crop you need to look into. So when we plant maize, we're doing a lot of work on spacing and different rotations, and then also on intercropping. Like in this photo, we planted sun hemp into maize. This is certified organic. Then we harvest it together, and then we will clean it afterwards. So then we have our own seeds to plant again, and we have organic maize to sell. So obviously, if you want to feed that, you don't have to clean it out. You can feed it directly to your chickens or whatever. But yeah, then we are experimenting with relay cropping. And we also plant veg with our wheat. Then we are focusing more and more on growing veggies. Reason for that being it gives us the opportunity to export and earn money in foreign currencies if it's needed. Also, it's for job creation in the area and also high margins. So in this photo, we planted our pumpkins that was for export on 1.5 meter rows. So it's every second one of our 76 centimeter planter. But this year we moved to 2.28, and it gave us the opportunity to get mustard in where we can use our vineyard tractors and our vineyard practices to actually work in between the pumpkin rows with our cover crop roller or a bossy slaner, or you can even disc if you want to maybe do something with the nematodes, which is not something we like to do. And also, if you grow mustard in between the rows, we saw that the pollinators are very quick to start pollinating your pumpkins once you roll down the mustard. We believe that perennial crops will be a very important part of our system and also of solutions for the future and also for South Africa. And that's also our big passion. So this is a photo of our Columbar vineyard with our pigs cleaning in between the rows. So for us, a big focus going forward is to integrate all of our practices so that it all goes into one. So the pigs can clean the vineyards, they will leave manure behind, and they even help us to sow the veg, for instance, that we clean out of our wheat. So yeah, the pigs are really help us to clean the vineyards and to close the loops on all different parts of our farm. And yeah, the vineyards has been certified organic now for almost 7 years, and we are very happy with the quality of the grapes and also the wine. When I was speaking to D.F. Pfeiffer, who was also talking today a while back, he said that regenerative agriculture should always regenerate the people that is practicing it. And that for me was a great saying, and that's a big part of our focus. On this photo we have Daniel Ngugi. He's from Kenya, and he was here for 3 months doing an internship on the farm. And for us, the internship program is very important, to share our ideas with other people and also give opportunities for other people to share their ideas with us, so that we can all learn and move forward together and find solutions for healthy soils and healthy people. And yeah, we're very happy with this internship program. At the moment we have 6-7 people here, and we also work closely with future farmers to create opportunities for people from here to go do internships overseas. So what does the future hold for us? Well, we are very sure that this is the way forward, regenerative agriculture. And we have lots and lots of challenges, which obviously there's not enough time to talk about today, but it's a great privilege to be working so closely with nature and to try and figure out how things work. For us, going forward now, we will focus on expanding the diversity in our basket. We will focus on being more efficient with the production. And then thirdly, we will try and add as much value as possible on the farm before we send it out to our consumers and the customers. So our slogan is soil to soul, and we want our soil to be as healthy as possible so that our produce are as nutritious as possible, and so that we can send out delicious and nutritious produce to everyone. It must be available also to everybody's kitchens who are looking for healthy food. Thanks for having me, and yeah, see you soon. Bye.
Here we have a view from our house where we are situated in the KZN rolling hills at the foothills of the Drakensberg. This is typical of the season in the winter, where the day before we would have had a howling west wind with possibilities of runaway fires, and the next day we wake up and the berg is white with snow. It's an extreme climate with heavy rainfall, hot dry periods, intermittent, so very erratic climate. Rolling terrain, if you look at the picture carefully, you'll see a dark green in the background, that is wheat. In front of it is cover crop that's sown into soya stubble. The yellow in the forefront is canola, where we've tried to mitigate the effects of fusarium, nematodes, etc. naturally. And so that is sort of typically what we do. We rotate 2 years maize and 1 year soybeans on the summer crops, where we're now integrating cover crops in between. The winter wheat is only under irrigation in KZN, and that is done on a 3 to 4 year rotation, also with soil health in mind. Here we have a picture of a combine harvester harvesting soybeans. You will notice the spreader at the back, which is important bearing in mind that the foreground here is the seed bed for the future. And you would have heard about the soil principle about cover. The idea is cover and even cover. The combine is fitted with tracks for better flotation and load carrying capacity and radial tires at the back to reduce any effect of the heavy machinery in the form of compaction on the soil. This is a typical NATAL planter, what we would use to precisely place the seed in the soil, with a cutting disc up front to cut the material, and a tine to place the fertilizer distributed directly below the seed, and then a row cleaner that will clear away any major material, not move soil, and then a double disc opener with a depth gauge wheel to place the seed accurately in the seed trench. And then we've got 2 rubber closing wheels at the back that would press it down just to firm it up for germination, just like you'd press down your seedling when you plant it in your garden. Here we see some precision planting of soybeans with row shut-off technology, although technology must never replace management. The standing maize stalks from the previous crop shield the crop from howling wind, and the lying down material on the soil surface shield the soil surface from the intensity of raindrops. The decaying material also increases the humic content of the soil. In the first 10 years of no-till, we doubled our carbon content. These soybeans are grown in between old maize rows, showing the crop rotation, which covers diversity. There's lovely cover and protection for the soil. Also want to touch on minimum disturbance, as these soybeans on our farm have been grown without fertilizer for 13 years with no problem. We are planting soybeans directly into a live stand of ungrazed stooling rye, trying to achieve the goal of live root in the ground 24/7, 365. This would require increased management, as the live crop could deplete the soil moisture at planting. Here we see a spade full of beautiful soil that was dug up. The color of the spade is indicative of what the soil used to look like. Now we have a dark brown, crumbly soil with structure and health. And next to it we see the soybeans emerging through that stand of stooling rye that was rolled down. These young weaners are enjoying a fine stand of cover crop, which is a 6-way mix with brassicas and legumes and grasses, directly drilled behind the harvester after soybean harvest. This fulfills the other principle of diversity and livestock integration. We've tried some companion cropping, like we see here is cowpeas and vetch in a stand of maize. It's a learning curve. Into the future, we would like to continue experimenting with companion cropping. We also want to reduce the chemical disturbance in insecticides and fungicides applied, and even fertilizers applied, by applying more natural products like kraal manure and compost. And into the future also, we're going to look at more diversity in our crop rotations, all tying in with being a good steward of God's creation. God bless you.
I am based in the Natal Midlands, which is mainly comprised of Maizaganye, Gobizembe, and Ozwatini areas, which are all under Mgungundlovu, and then there's Tabamhlope and cornfields. These areas are areas that we started working with mainly in 2018 and 2019. We started expanding as well as in 2020. The areas that we work in mainly have roughly 150 farmers that I work with that are doing CA, of which most have started planting cover crops as well. And there are some that have started venturing into livestock integration under regenerative agriculture. Farmers have been experimenting with regenerative agriculture for about 3 years now in the Natal Midlands, with quite a large number of new participants. Basically, the main things that they've been working on, they've been doing maize and bean intercrops, and maize and cowpeas, as well as summer cover crops, winter cover crops, and we've also added strip cropping this year. Although it did not go as planned, but we all got more or less the concept of how it's supposed, to turn out and how it's supposed to be done. In terms of regenerative agriculture practices, farmers have been doing intercropping, mostly intercropping maize and legumes, as I've explained previously. One of the primary lessons and one of the things that they've seen from that was that the cowpeas formed a canopy much faster than the beans, even when they made their spacings wider than the recommended spacing. So we normally say that the spacing is 50 centimeters in between rows for maize and 25 centimeters in between rows for beans. But even when they made the spaces larger, the cowpeas still were able to grow fast enough to form a canopy before the weeds resprouted, whereas the beans struggled to do the same. And that is one of the main observations that the farmers made in terms of In the first year, farmers mainly experimented with maize and beans and maize and cowpeas, and from the second year we introduced winter cover crops as well as summer cover crops for them to experiment with. And one farmer of ours, Mamutembi Mkize, she decided to plant a whole plot of winter cover crops only, and then she rotated them with dry beans. And one of the things that she had said was that there was a rapid growth and like in her dry beans, and they formed a cover pretty quickly, and she's expecting very good yields from them, although well, she hasn't harvested yet, so we don't have the results in terms of how much yield she's got. So apart from Mutembi Mkize, there's been other farmers that have been experimenting with the principles of regenerative agriculture. And one of the things that farmers have been venturing in is livestock integration. So how can we bring our livestock into our farming system in such a way that they don't just eat maize stover, but we grow something that our livestock can eat as well. So we planted some summer cover crops and winter cover crops and some grasses early this year. Among the grasses there was Pansacola and Digitaria that the farmers experimented with. Although those ones didn't germinate well, the summer and winter cover crops did quite well, which the farmers have started cutting and giving to their livestock later in the day when they return from grazing. And also in terms of livestock integration, farmers, we've been having a series of workshops on winter supplementation and looking at various options that farmers can use in terms of supplementing their livestock feed in winter, because the cattle lose quite a lot of weight in winter due to the absence of sufficient grazing grass. So we did a few workshops on not just on feed supplementation, but we also looked at diseases, and also we did a practical demonstration on baling using the grasses that are available and adding a premix 450 or molasses to the mix to make it more palatable for the cattle as well, over and top as well as growing your cover crops as part of your supplementation. Okay. The main challenges that we had this year are mainly the common challenges we have in farming, mainly one of them being, overgrowth of weeds, especially in the strip cropping trial. Where we had planted the variety of grasses and maize. The maize seed was mostly eaten by birds, and the grasses were outgrown by weeds. And also in terms of weeds, if farmers don't weed on time or they weed late, that has had an effect on their final yield. But one main problem that we identified this year that is unique to this particular season is an outbreak of diseases in cowpeas where farmers lost most farmers did not get any yield for cowpeas because it just turned black and died out, which we believe was due to blight. And another challenge we had was with delayed germination, especially in Impendle, which is a new area we started working with. There was an issue with delayed germination. However, the maize seemed to have recovered well and grew well at the end. And then also, as we all know, we're going through a pandemic. So the farmers that normally sell their maize to street vendors lost quite a bit of income due to lockdown regulations, as they were unable to sell since most businesses were shut down. Still on the challenges that we've experienced this season, some of our farmers decided that they felt they were not getting much under CA in terms of yields. This is one area we've been working in called cornfields, and we've been struggling to make progress from the beginning. So this year they decided, one of them decided, no, let me go back to plowing because I don't get much yield under CA anyway. And when just after he had plowed his field, they got very, very heavy flash floods, which washed away almost all of his topsoil and his maize, which caused much, much greater damage than he had anticipated, and he had to put sacks in the field in order to prevent the soil from further washing away. So it was a painful way to learn, or to witness the destructive effects of plowing, especially when the soil is already degraded. However, it is one experience that has caused him to consider actually, withdrawing from plowing for now and trying out CA and not giving up until he starts seeing a difference, because it is better to get some yield than no yield at all. The primary lessons that we have gotten, or that the farmers have gleaned from this whole process, are that number one, regenerative agriculture saves on input costs, although the farmers say that more labor is required when it comes to CA. And the second thing was that it takes longer to see results when you don't follow the principles. And that is something that we always tell farmers, that if you want to see a difference, you've got to be consistent in applying the principles. So in other words, you've got to make sure you intercrop, you rotate, and your soil is always covered. If you don't do those things, then you're gonna have trouble seeing an improvement. And then the third thing, which is probably the greatest highlight of the season, was that almost all of our farmers sold their maize from their CA trials, which is a first, and it's a huge step forward, because in the first year when we started with them, they weren't able to sell any of it or use it because they mainly grow maize for the green mealies market. And then in the second year, only some had a problem with the size of the cobs and the quality of the maize. And this year, everybody seems to have done well in terms of their maize growth and yields in the CA trials, or at least most of them seem to have done well. So it was quite nice to see that they were able to sell. Of course, these are the ones that were not majorly affected by the lockdown. And then also some of the lessons they've learned is that from this, they've learned the lesson that it's possible to get good yields under regenerative agriculture, and also they've noticed that there's reduced runoff and erosion on fields planted under CA when you compare them to conventional plots, and also highly degraded and leached soils are more difficult to rehabilitate than soils that have low levels of degradation. And that is something that even us as field workers are starting to witness, or are seeing that it's harder to rehabilitate severely degraded soils. And another thing that the farmers have learned, and we have all learned, is that climatic conditions and soil characteristics are still important in deciding what it is that a farmer is going to grow. So regenerative agriculture is not a one-size-fits-all solution. You still need to consider whether whatever it is that you're planting is suitable for your area, and whether it grows well for your soil type and under your climatic conditions. And also, one thing that we have learned is that, perseverance always brings good results. And the more we persevere and the more we give it our all, the better the results. I thank you so much.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Charles Williams. I'm the cellar master at the Toren Private Cellar, a boutique winery in the Stellenbosch region. Our focus is specifically on growing premium quality grapes and wines for the production of Bordeaux-style blends. We've been applying a regenerative agricultural system through a 100% organic approach since the 1st of December 2016. This gives us a real unique opportunity of focusing in depth on unique areas and different approaches that will be needed on each of these areas. Although we're a smaller farming unit, we hope to show through this slideshow how we've been able to apply regenerative agriculture, drive profitability, increase the sustainability and the welfare for all families involved in our operation. As a producer of premium quality wines, our whole philosophy relies on the ability to grow premium quality grapes. Growing premium quality grapes heavily relies on two pillars, namely plant health and soil and plant water management. For the focus of this webinar, we're only going to look at plant health, which again heavily relies on three pillars, namely soil health, integrated pest management, and integrated disease management. If we take a holistic view at what we want to achieve, you want a plant that's vital enough, healthy enough to sustain any biotic stresses as well as abiotic stresses, which will be applied through soil water management, and in turn that will give you a better quality grape over a sustainable period and over differing vintages. Soil health is the most important aspect to consider when implementing a long-term strategy of plant health, and more importantly, sustainable plant health over a varying amount of seasons. The way that we approach soil health is by improving A, the soil structure, and B, by enriching the soil with ample symbiotic microfauna. Soil structure is built primarily through three techniques at the Toren: composting, planting diverse cover crop, and also by mulching. Composting supplies the soil with the necessary organic material, which will not only improve the soil structure, but by doing so will also improve the soil's ability to retain water and be better buffered against abiotic stresses, which is of course very important when growing quality grapes. We believe that the compost have an even greater role to play than just adding carbon, and that is actually to enrich the soils with the necessary micronutrients that will cause a flush in microbial life. This flush in microbial life will mineralize, fixate and solubilize a lot of macro and micronutrients. For this reason, composting is applied just after harvest as soon as possible before the first fall rains. This flush in microbial activity will coincide with the flush in root growth of the vines post-harvest, and will allow the necessary nutrients to become available in the soil and to be assimilated by the plant and stored in its perennial parts for the following season. Cover crops also plays a big part in creating diversity of microfauna. But this is actually the primary vehicle through which we drive the addition of carbon into our soils. We use a diversity of varieties, including oats, lupins, fava beans, and radishes. We have also very successfully experimented with white clover as a semi-permanent cover crop. The last aspect we're going to cover is mulching. We strive to have our soils covered with living material throughout the season. The mulching of the cover crops allows us to keep the soils alive while also controlling weeds and creating a permanent hope for microbial life to flourish on. The issue of water use is always at play, with a lot of people believing that cover crops actually takes up too much of the water that should be available for the crop. We, however, believe that the positive effects of improved soil structure as well as microbial well-being outweighs this concern. The last technique that we implement to get our soils nice and healthy is by supplementing our soils with ample amounts of microbial life at key phenological stages. These include mycorrhiza, trichoderma, and specific bacteriums. The role that these organisms play is by mineralizing, solubilizing, and fixing macronutrients, but also by making a wide array of micronutrients available to the vines. Furthermore, they help improve the soil structure directly by degradation of organic material. The second pillar of achieving plant health is by the successful implementation of an integrated disease management strategy. The primary diseases of concern to grape growers is downy mildew early in the season, powdery mildew a little bit closer to December, and of course botrytis rot. Although we have key organic ingredients to combat these, namely sulfur and copper, both these ingredients are still relatively hard on the plants and will have a resultant period of stunt growth directly after application. For this reason, we far prefer to keep sulfur and copper for absolutely adverse weather conditions and to rather rely on trichodermas and bacteriums to combat disease under normal conditions. These organisms will not only directly prey on the disease, but they will also stimulate plant vitality. The ultimate goal for us as grape growers is to have a plant that is vital, and this is quantified by measuring the sugar of the sap in the plant. The higher the sugar, the more the natural ability of the plant will be to resist diseases. The third and final pillar upon which plant health rests is with the successful implementation of an integrated pest management regime. In conventional farming, a more blanketed approach is used to get rid of all insects, bad, but unfortunately with it also the good. We prefer a much more integrated strategy of identifying the unwanted pests, but by also knowing the positive symbiotic insects that lives in your vineyards. We will then only target the pests while trying to create a positive environment for your predatory insects to live in. This scenario can be likened to a bank robbery. By using a shotgun, police can most likely resolve the situation and the threat, but innocent bystanders will most likely also be impacted, whereas by using a sniper, a targeted threat can be neutralized. This approach, although more precise and a lot more time-consuming, will result in much better profitability when compared to extremely expensive pest sprays. Again, the goal in regenerative farming is to create an ecosystem where the good can naturally suppress the bad. It is for this reason that we actually release additional wasps and beetles that will prey on some of the bad insects in our vineyards. We will also spray a combination of fungi and bacteriums that will target plant-eating pests while not having an impact on our predatory insects. So the final point of discussion will maybe just look a little bit back at the topic of heal the land, heal the people, and how regenerative farming, or the organic approach specifically that we utilize here at the Turin, has increased the sustainability of our system or our product. So what we've seen over a period of time is that your farming system becomes much more efficient. That's through all the points that I've highlighted in this presentation. So first of all, your soil health will increase with regenerative farming. which will result in more nutrients becoming available that is actually locked up in the soil at the moment, which leads towards a much more targeted fertilization program. The second thing is that your soil water retention will increase, leading to less irrigation and again a cost saving. And lastly, because of increased plant health, your pest and disease management can be much more targeted, and it's really here that you can really save a lot of money. Apart from all the factors just mentioned, the real benefit that we've seen in driving our business would be the perceived grape quality that has increased. It is, however, very difficult to define grape quality in terms of numbers, but it's something that sensorically we've been observing, and this has been translated to the wine. Our ultimate vision for this approach of farming would be for our end client to be able to see that increased quality and would be willing to pay a premium in securing this product. On a personal note, wherever I've been involved in the regenerative agriculture or even the organic approach that we're following, the people utilizing it have always been in a frame of mind of not only having this approach should not only be seen somewhere in a bank statement, but that it should aptly heal the land and heal the people. So it's really imperative for us to see the benefits reflected in the livelihood of all the families and the whole community that is involved in producing wines at the Turin. I would like to thank Integra Trust again for involving us in this really amazing webinar. I believe there's going to be a Q&A session at the end of everybody's presentation, so if there's any specific notes you made or questions you want to answer or even a topic you want to further discuss, I'd be more than happy to try and assist there. Apart from that, stay safe, stay warm. Thank you very much for listening.
Good morning. My name is Fred DuPont. I'm employed by the Fruit Farm Group South Africa for the past 10 years as technical manager and more recently as area manager for the Mpumalanga province. My background education is entomology, which I studied at the University of Pretoria. Thank you for inviting me and allowing me to represent the Fruit Farm Group at this important event. Just some background information on the company. We are a producer, packer, marketer of fruit for the export and local market. Deciduous fruit, including apples, pears, stone fruit and table grapes, are produced and packed in the Western Cape. Subtropical fruit, namely avocados and macadamias, are produced and packed in KwaZulu-Natal, Mpumalanga and Limpopo. In addition to our own production, we also pack and market avocados from third-party producers into export and local markets. Perennial monocrop orchards are established, which remain productive for a very long time. Extensive land prep is carried out pre-planting to ensure that the right conditions are created for the plants. This action results in a significant amount of soil disturbance. Since the focus is on fruit farming, crop rotations are not considered, and orchards that reach the end of their lifespan are either replanted immediately or after a very short fallow period. The tree row is irrigated and often ridged. This in effect creates two different systems, being the ridged tree row and the work row. There is strong emphasis on yield, fruit quality, food safety, social and environmental sustainability to satisfy our discerning supermarket customer base. We began our regen journey in 2017 by indexing soil health at all our farms in order to establish a benchmark. Soils were sampled on the tree row, in the work row, and compared to samples taken from undisturbed soil. These samples were sent to ward laboratories in the USA and analyzed using the Haney soil health test as well as the PLFA soil microbial community analysis. The Haney test combines 5 independent measurements of a soil's biological properties. A soil health index should ideally be greater than 7 and increasing over time. The benchmark analysis revealed large variations between our different farms and the different areas. The soil health index was generally low except for a farm in KwaZulu-Natal, depicted as Farm 6 on the slide. In general, the greater the disturbance to the soil, the lower the soil health index. In 2017, we started planting diverse cover crop mixes at our Western Cape farms in the work row between the ridges. Cool season annuals were planted using a Piquet no-till fine seed planter prior to the onset of winter rains. The seed germination success and the biomass growth attained have been variable and strongly dependent on area, plant timing, and rainfall received. At the same time, we started covering our bare soil on the ridges or tree row with mulch, wood chips, and compost. In the summer rainfall areas of KwaZulu-Natal and Mpumalanga, we started planting cover crops in the work row 1 year later in 2018. Here, warm season soil conditioning mixes were used and planted just prior to the onset of summer rainfall. Despite below average rainfall in 2018 and 2019, germination was excellent and growth was good enough to harvest a significant amount of biomass to be placed on the ridges. The second set of soil samples were submitted to Ward Laboratory in March-April this year, and the partial set of results received to date depicted in the table before you. The upswing in average soil health index results received to date compared to 2018 is significant in most cases, encouraging and reflects the level of success attained in the corrective measures applied. There is visible breakdown of the materials used to cover the soil on the ridges and corresponding increase in soil organic matter percentage. The increase in biodiversity above and below the ground is noticeable and immediate. We must assume improved water infiltration and moisture retention, although this has not yet been measured. To end off, we believe that the value of our farms and our ability to farm sustainably into the future will be strongly linked to the health of our soils and the health of our surrounding ecosystem. A healthy soil equals a healthy plant equals healthy, nutritious fruit. Our objective, therefore, is to continue to build on our soil health and reduce our reliance on inorganic inputs, fertilizers, and chemicals. This must lead to a reduction in input costs, a reduced carbon footprint, increased biodiversity, and greater sustainability. Thank you.
I will be talking about the impact of conservation agriculture and dryland production in the Western Cape, focusing on the long-term rotational trials. Giving an overview of the Western Cape, the areas in colour marks the spread of rainfall. It gives you a good indication of where the best areas is for cropping, but all the reds are basically where annual cash crops can be and pastures can be produced in the Western Cape. This is the conditions we work under in the dryland production areas of the Western Cape. Rainfall averages are between 150 and 550 millimeters of rain in the annually, with about 80% of that falling in the winter production season from April to September in the Swartland. And in the Southern Cape, it ranges from 75% winter rainfall to about 20 or 50% rainfall going from west to east along the Southern Cape. Some of that falls then in summer, and that's why the Southern Cape can have lucerne as a summer pasture. The soils are between 400 and 200 millimeters deep, ranging from up to 70% rock, as you can see on the left-hand side at Riversdale, to very sandy soil on the right-hand side at Hopefield. Everyone knows the benefits or the three legs of conservation agriculture, but this is the differences this has made in our long-term trials when drought plays a role. The oldest trial for which this data represents started in 1996, and full-on CA principles since 2001, where we had our first full nodal planter. you can see in 2003 was our first drought. We harvested 500 kilograms per hectare on average across the whole trial. The next year, the rainfall was a little bit lower but better spread, and we started doing 1.9 tons on average. In 2015, the third drought, 168 mils, we did 2.1 tons on average, and that improved to 2017, 2.3 tons. And last year we had 200 mils, but we did 3.7 ton, and that shows the resilience of the system over time. But I must make a note here that this does not happen overnight. It is a long-term project, and once you switch to CA, that is one of the things you should keep in mind. Gives you a good indication of the importance of diversity in the system as one of the legs. On the left-hand side, you'll see all the different systems containing wheat, canola, or lupin, and the bottom four systems, E, F, G, and H, will include sheep as well, so incorporating the animal factor. This is a study done on the wheat seed bank, just to show the effect of rotation and does it play an impact on weed control. As you can see, the more diverse a system was, like in C and D or G, it is a better performing system with the diversity, which meant that the higher diversity, with the higher diversity in management strategies, lowered the wheat seed bank without giving extra, especially in the pasture systems where animals were part of it, giving less or needing less herbicides to do the work. There was lower numbers of weeds, more diversity, but the numbers were not of financial impact, whereas the full-on cash systems in A to D relied heavily on herbicides and much higher volumes of NP and K compared to the other systems. This is one of the big benefits we've seen, but this becomes more clear in some of the slides to come, which we will handle just now. This slide gives you an indication of the possibilities of introducing a cover crop into your mix, especially if you can graze it, because that's one of the big issues in the South Africa or the Western Cape situation is we don't have the ability to have 2 crops a year. And so if you want to do a cover crop, you are going to replace a cash crop with a cover crop. So there must be ways for you to get the benefits of the cover crop and get some money back from the cover crop. Although we get a lot of nitrogen back from a mixture, having it being grazed with animals makes a huge difference in terms of income. But this gives you a good idea of what the cost is per ton of cover crop mixture produced compared to a commercial available sheep feeds. But it makes a huge difference in terms of producing your own food. And the kicker was that the student on the left-hand side who did his master's on this made it clear that, or showed clearly that where you grazed high intensity grazing, there was no difference in the available nutrients in the soil or on top of the soil compared to say the control where you just terminated the cover crop and let it lie on top of the soil. We managed in such a way that there was still enough regrowth to give enough cover during the summer months. Just to give you an indication of production in the Conservation Ag systems in the Western Cape. Going from, if you look at the table, from top to bottom, the first 4 is the cash cropping systems, where we have monoculture as the control, and then the introducing alternatively canola and lupin in different sequences, and then the last 4 is different pasture systems, all based on annual legume medics. Interestingly enough, the average wheat yield, and this is over a 20-year period, for monoculture is 2.4 tons compared to a system like the one from the bottom where it is 3.7 tons. But it's interesting if you rank the production, say if you have an 800 hectare arable farm, your monoculture will definitely give you the most wheat, compared to a system like the second one from the bottom, where we have wheat medics, canola medics. Only 25% of the soil is planted to wheat, so it produces much less wheat in total. But this is not what it is about. If you look and take it further to the next slide, you will see the difference it makes in the whole system. If you take the whole system into account, and how the rankings changes. So remember, monoculture being best, highest producer versus, say, for instance, the wheat medic, canola medic system, which is the worst or the lowest wheat production, and we'll compare it in the next slide in terms of gross margins. Now we have the same system, and you give the average gross margin for the different systems, as in the slide before where we gave the average wheat yield. Monoculture, producing the highest amount of wheat, gives you the worst ranking income and gross margin, compared to a system which we said in the previous slide, wheat medic, canola medic, which was producing the lowest amount of wheat. If you look at the overall system, the gross margin jumps up to 4th highest. And then the bottom one is a wheat medic clover mixture. And then you will see a little plus S there. That is a salt bush pasture, where we take the sheep out of the system initially at the start of the season. They go into the salt bush, gives the medic enough time to re-establish before they go back. This means a slightly higher production and a higher carrying capacity of sheep on the pastures as well. But if you look to the right-hand side and you compare the gross income to, if you take monoculture as 100%, just by adding one single canola, your gross income for the system jumps with 21%. And then the bottom 4 systems, where the pastures and sheep production is included, much better figures, which underlines the importance of having animals in the system in conservation agriculture as in regenerative agriculture. What is the way forward for us in the Western Cape? Over the last 4 years, we are trying to manage our trials downwards in terms of the artificial input costs. We are lowering our nitrogen quite heavily and letting the systems work for us. At most, we are at least 50% less fertilizer than most commercial farmers around us, and still maintaining our yields. Interestingly enough, last year we had a trial in a trial where we had given nitrogen for the whole camp, and then only half of the camp got a top dressing of 25 kilograms. So we were either on 15 kilograms of nitrogen or 40. There was no difference in yield, and obviously a difference in the gross margin if you compare the two. Last year we also sprayed no insecticides on the trial, especially on the new trial where we are planting cover crop borders, so to attract beneficial insects, and that is working for us at this stage. We also feel it's very important handing over to our younger generation, making sure that they understand the new ways of doing things and what our aims are going forward. The below picture is just canola coming up through some very good residue. This slide gives an indication of our new effort in terms of pure regenerative agriculture. It's a trial we started last year, preparation of, and this year fully initiated, where we are looking to, within 3 years, go from some artificial inputs to no artificial inputs at all, introducing cover crops both winter and summer on a camp for 3-year period, managing all weeds down, having it grazed by sheep on a high intensity basis, and then having cash crops as well on the sister camp in wheat, barley and canola. Those 3 will be rotated over the 3-year period, and then after that 3 years the 2 camps switches around, and then the wheat, barley and canola will be produced without any artificial inputs. We're also stacking then meat, wool and honey productions because we've introduced pollinator strips as well on as borders all along all the camps that is part of this trial. And we have a student currently looking at the economy of that as well, comparing the switch from normal CA like we're doing it currently to more regenerative type agriculture. And then we'll see how this develops over time. We're quite excited about the trial. We obviously face some problems ahead with some issues that we'll look into further, but we are very excited and we're looking forward to the results of this trial. This is just to give you an indication of my contact details if anyone should want to ask any further questions after today. Thank you very much.
Hello and welcome back again. I'm sure you enjoyed the video and the inputs and experiences and stories from all the farmers around the country. I really want to thank all the farmers again for their hard work and inputs to compile these videos. So for me, it's just to say that there's no more time. Unfortunately, we cannot have a live questions and answer session. Of course, we really believe in interaction, especially with the farmers, but maybe that for a later stage. Then secondly, we will make this webinar and specifically the video available at the later stage after this webinar. So just look out for that. And we will also try to connect the questions. I see there's a lot of good questions coming in. We'll try to connect the people, especially with the farmers who's asking the good questions. So stay tuned and enjoy the rest of the webinar. And we see you again in the next session where we will have interaction with all the good farmers out there. Thank you very much.